In modern football, fullbacks are critical to a club's success. They provide not only defensive solidity, but they are also critical in the build-up phase, and they can be key contributors in the attack. Since the long-term injury of Dani Carvajal and Éder Militão, Real Madrid has struggled defensively, even playing a key midfielder, Fede Valverde, at right back. Carlo Ancelotti, being a good soldier for Florentino Perez, has been reluctant to say publicly that the club needs to sign a right back in the winter transfer window. Currently, Real Madrid sits third after failing to beat Rayo Vallecano. When you analyze the goals that Real Madrid conceded, you can see a weakness not only from the fullbacks, but also from set pieces. So far this season, Real Madrid has conceded 27 goals after 28 games. For context, Real Madrid conceded 26 goals all of last season in La Liga. If they keep the current pace of goals conceded in La Liga, they will concede approximately 37 to 38 goals. That is a 46% increase in the number of goals conceded. That's almost 50%. And that's what you call alarming. And this is why you're seeing Carlo Ancelotti on the touchline looking disheveled. It's no secret, when you look at Carlo Ancelotti in the press conferences, he looks like a man that's concerned. He doesn't look like a man who's relaxed and has it all figured out. He sees the problems and he's looking at the numbers like this. A 46% increase is truly a big issue. What we've heard Carlo Ancelotti say over and over this season is that the biggest issue is the defense, and that the team needs to be more compact. And now you're seeing why the numbers are revealing that. In games where Real Madrid hasn't played that well, they've relied on individual moments of brilliance from key players like Jude Bellingham, Fede Valverde, Vinicius Jr., Kylian. But you cannot afford a situation where you're needing to outscore your opponents. There's no doubt that the injury of Dani Carvajal really hurt the team. He had arguably his best season last year, with many people calling for him to be amongst the shortlist for the Ballon d'Or. But here's some interesting data that I was able to pull from last year and this year as well. Prior to Carvajal's injury, the team conceded 10 goals in 6 games. That's an average of 1.6 goals conceded per game. But after his injury, the team conceded 22 goals in 13 games. That's an average of 1.69 goals conceded per game. And that doesn't look like a significant difference because based on the numbers, that is actually not a significant difference. But of course, there's been a huge emphasis by Carlo Ancelotti following the injury of Dani Carvajal to really focus on being solid defensively. But we don't have to look far to look at the evidence from the game against Atalanta, where Lookman straight up cooked Lucas Vazquez. Or if we look at the game against Rayo Vallecano, where they were able to successfully whip in that ball from Fran Garcia's side, Lucas Vazquez doesn't pick up the attacker from behind him, and they score. Nobody defends another set piece, and they score another goal. Or we can talk about the Rafael Leao performance at the Bernabeu, where he looked like a prime Vini Jr., once again roasting Lucas Vazquez. We can even take it back to last season when Dani Carvajal was suspended in the Champions League semi-final against Bayern Munich. The away leg in Munich, Lucas Vazquez gives up a penalty where he fouls Musiala in the box. How about the Champions League tie against PSG in the 2021-22 season, where Lucas Vazquez comes in for Dani Carvajal, Mbappe gets through him and scores that goal. We lose 1-0 with the tie coming back to the Bernabeu. This is not a rag on Lucas Vazquez. The guy is good at what he does. He's a really good secondary option. He's good going forward. The guy is naturally a right midfielder. But if you're asking him to defend some of the most elite left wingers in the world, then that's your fault. That is not Lucas Vazquez's fault. That's on you. We cannot underestimate the value of solid defensive fullbacks. This is why Ferland Mendy is one of Carlo Ancelotti's key guys, is because of how reliable he is defensively. Not because he's a Marcelo type of fullback going forward. He's not that kind of player. But he's not a defensive liability. Last season, Ferland Mendy was second in the team for accurate progressive passing. Now think about how important that is, especially in a setting where you're being pressed by the opposition. And there was a stretch last season where nobody was able to successfully dribble through Ferland Mendy. There was only that one successful dribble against him, which was the game in this Champions League semi-final where Leroy Sané scored that goal, and Ferland Mendy was just gesturing to Toni Kroos to cover the half space. So if you want to count that, you can, but it's really an injustice to Ferland Mendy's season last year. When we faced Liverpool in the Champions League final in the 2021-22 season, Ferland Mendy did an excellent job on Mo Salah. He kept him practically quiet the whole night. But when we look back at the game this year at Anfield, Ferland Mendy of course gives up that penalty to Salah in a very bad time of the game. And immediately Carlo Ancelotti takes him off the field, which of course is not going to do much for the guy's confidence. Last season, Ferland Mendy was mostly fit throughout the season, but now he's going back to having those niggles and injuries again after he signed a contract extension. The problem is most elite sides have their best players on the left wing. And although Lucas Vazquez is a good secondary option, going the entire season with Lucas Vazquez against players of the quality of a Lookman or a Leroy Sané, you're not going to get far. You're going to always have to outscore your opponents in those situations. When you look at the game against Rayo Vallecano, Real Madrid scored 3 goals yet didn't win the match. You cannot afford to have a season where you're relying on your attacking players to save you every single time. And look, before some of you in the comments say, oh, here he is defending Carlo Ancelotti again. That's not at all what's going on here. I'm trying to identify that this is a weak link in the team that the board has not addressed due to their complacency. Manchester City just lost today against Manchester United in a game where they were ahead until the 85th minute. And then they give up a poor penalty in the box. They concede a goal pretty quickly, and then they lose the game. They have to travel to Paris in their next Champions League match. If PSG gets a result, our biggest competition over the last few years, Manchester City being out of the Champions League, we have to take advantage of this. If that happens, the Champions League is for us to lose. Barcelona today lost at home to Leganés. Think about that. They lost to Las Palmas at home. Now they lost today to Leganés. You're telling me we can't win titles against teams when they're dropping the ball like this? We all thought this Barca team was elite with the Hansi Flick offside trap. But look at them. They're losing at home to a team that's 15th place in La Liga. And if Liverpool is our biggest competition in the Champions League this year, we have to like our odds. We faced them, we played them in Anfield, and they were barely able to beat us when most of the team was out injured. But the rate in which we're conceding goals is not good enough. Look at Atletico Madrid. They've conceded 11 goals so far this season. They brought in Julian Alvarez, who's a quality forward, and they can feasibly make it to the top spot before the end of this year. What we've seen from Raul Asensio so far this year is that this guy is clearly a good enough player at Real Madrid to be within the squad. I'd be interested to see, is this guy a viable solution at right back? Who knows? But what I do know is Lucas Vazquez as a long-term solution doesn't work. And putting Fede Valverde at right back in big games where we need a guy like that in the midfield also doesn't work. The team is traveling to Qatar this week. Think about the travel time. Think about the fact that these guys have to go there, they have to play a match, and then fly back to Madrid. And the number of fixtures that the team has to play in January is absolutely insane. Take a look at the number of games that Real Madrid has to play in January. Carlo Ancelotti said in the press conference prior to the game against Rayo Vallecano that he only really has 15 players at his disposal, and that's why he doesn't rotate the squad as much. Carlo, before the season starts, always talks about rotating the team and some of the players more. Before the season started, he said he was going to send some of the players away at holiday because of how long the season was going to be this year. But he's backtracked on that and said that due to the long-term injuries of Dani Carvajal and Éder Militão, he can't do that any longer. The other night, Fede Valverde played the full 90 minutes. Jude Bellingham, the full 90 minutes. What does Real Madrid's prospects look like for the rest of the season? I don't know, but I am concerned. Yes, the fullbacks are an issue, but it goes well beyond that. Once these